Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Point Break. I'm Antara. 4 days ago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi sat down with the founders and CEOs of 20 Indian space startups of national space on the National Space Day. Two of those founders are in fact sitting with me right now as I speak. The room PM Modi met represented almost every layer of India's emerging space economy. I'm talking rockets, satellites, propulsion, orbital intelligence, debris removal, you name it, it was there in the room. Things that barely existed as commercial categories in India 5 years ago. Now, PM's message went beyond celebrating their technology. He, in fact, asked founders to make space useful for agriculture, for disaster management, for urban planning, for ordinary citizens. And he described a larger ambition here. India should create a quote-unquote aura capable of attracting space engineers, entrepreneurs, companies, and capital from across the world. 6 years after India opened the sector to private participation, that ambition no longer rests entirely on pitch decks. India has, in fact, around 440 registered space tech startups. Investment has reached approximately $618.5 million. Skyroot completed an orbital mission in July. ISRO is progressively transferring mature technologies to private industry. But having said that, global leadership requires, I would say, more than affordable engineering and policy support. It requires trusted technology, it requires repeatable missions, it requires international customers and companies capable of surviving failure. A decade from now, when the world thinks space, will it think India? That is essentially the question we'll try and answer in this episode of Point Break. I'm Antara. Let's get right into it. Two founders who were in that room with the Prime Minister just a few days ago, they are with me right now, each building something very, very different, each, I would say, at a very different stage of the same journey. My first guest is Krishanu Acharya, who's the co-founder and CEO of Suhora Technologies, which is a Noida-based deep tech startup that turns satellite images into real-time intelligence for defense agencies, for disaster response authorities, and energy companies as well. He, in fact, is a master's in remote sensing and GIS from Vidyasagar University. He was also previously at DRDO. And he is someone who has said this very, very clearly, that India's private space story needs to increasingly move towards downstream applications, that the sustainable growth engine is downstream and not rockets. Krishanu, welcome to Point Break. Really good to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you, Antara.
And my second guest today is Dr. Chiranjeevi, who is the founder and CEO of Cosmoserve Space, which is a Hyderabad startup building, one of, I would say, the most ambitious things in India's space ecosystem, autonomous spacecraft for active debris removal. He, in fact, is a former ISRO scientist with 14 years at Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, deputy project director of India's Gaganyaan mission, represented India at the Interagency Space Debris Coordination Committee, which is a global platform across 13 space agencies. He, in fact, left ISRO to build the solution to a problem he watched grow from the inside. Dr. Chiranjeevi, it's really good to have you here as well. Gentlemen, welcome to Point Break.
Thank you. Thank you, Antara.
All right. Let me start with what happened just a few days ago, right? You were both in that room with the Prime Minister. Now, before we go anywhere else, what is it that he said to you and what is it that stayed with you? Chiran, if you want to take this first.
No, I think the first question to me was what happened in Paris. Because I met Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji along with President Macron during Viva Tech, which happened in June. So I pitched to them, and he, to my surprise, he remembered our conversation and inquired about what happened after that. And then he was curious to know, did I get any collaborative opportunities from that region? So that was really surprising to me. So I think he also mentioned about space debris while during his concluding remarks that companies building in space debris, they should collaborate with environmental organizations working across the globe to scale up our solutions for these different environmental solutions, environmental problems. So I think these are the two great messages I take from that conversation.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that, Chiran. Krishanu, anything that you want to share?
Yes. So I think, before that, what he has asked us, specifically to Suhora, I think I worthwhile to mention that, the warmth that we felt during that, meeting. So it was not like that and we were meeting somebody, a prime minister of this country. It really felt like we are meeting someone, very elder in our family, who is taking a note of what we've been doing. And of course, guiding us what we should be doing further going forward, etc. So that particular experience was, very, very delighting. That what I can say first. As a company, of course, we've been working on a lot of national security program, some of the other security and strategic applications. We briefed him what we did in last couple of years, and of course, he pointed out, okay, go meet the NSA, and we spoke with the NSA, had a small briefing, etc. as well. So yeah, so. And that was the thing for us specifically. But what I can also tell you in terms of his understanding of the technology, because what he was doing while he was in Gujarat, using space as a science to optimize as the state was operating was visible, and he was connecting some of the applications. He was doing some to optimize locations of network towers to some schools, etc. He was mentioning. So those are that we know instantly he has a eyes and ears of the technology, and he also appreciates. So these are some of the I think thing I'll remember now. So yeah.
All right. Thank you for sharing that, Krishanu. Sounds fantastic. In fact, starting the conversation here, Prime Minister Modi wants India to create a global aura, right? His words, for space. Now, not just a large domestic market, but a place the world comes to build. I would say that requires India to be known for something distinctive, something the world cannot replicate easily elsewhere. Krishanu, my first question is to you. You've said that India's story needs to move more towards downstream applications. What must India actually become globally known for? Because affordable launches alone won't, I would say, create that aura. So where do you land on that?
Okay, so see, we are not on the upstream as of now. So affordable launches, quite a few companies, as you already know, starting from SpaceX, they've been doing for years now. That's something definitely we have to see how competitive we can remain, going forward. But what we can do quickly as a country is what we do again. Is the downstream applications. So we can use, our capabilities to use satellite data, a lot of other AI, compute, etc., and tackle the real world problem. I'll give you some examples. The way we as a company, Suhora, does. We create solutions for critical infrastructure. We built ISR capabilities, which delivers solutions from national security to disaster to energy infrastructure, where space became one of the input, and that becomes almost a centralized theme. How it can give a large area monitoring capabilities. So I think we as a country, India, should focus not only those high ambitious projects like what Chiran is also doing, but also we have to keep our feet grounded and deliver these real world problems, solutions to those real world problems like agriculture, forest, disaster. PM Modi himself, he emphasized about the agriculture a lot, environmental a lot, right? So space has solutions and can deliver a significant solutions towards those applications. So I think going forward, we as a country has to focus on those low-lying areas, having success around that. Looking at the heterogeneity of the country, the way India's problems are, look at the, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, the landscape, the demography, the people, the nature of the people, the environment, everything changes from, a few thousand kilometers to kilometers, right? So if you can solve these problems in-house in the country, and which is unique enough, we can then export it to the many other areas, many other countries. Right. And I think we as a country has to focus on that as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you for answering that. Chiran, I believe you left a 14-year ISRO career to build an active debris removal startup, right? which Indian space capability could actually become globally indispensable over the next decade? And does India really have what it takes to, sort of lead in the frontier space markets like this rather than following markets that have already been defined?
Yeah, my opening statement with Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji was everyone in this room, most of them, of my friends, are building rockets and sending satellites. And I decided to remove them once they are dead in space. So that is the bigger, I think, bigger perspective which I need to bring in here because last 7 decades, 20,000 objects were sent to space. And now we are talking of sending in just 1 decade, 1 million satellites. So the problem you can just imagine how exponentially large it is going to be in very soon. So this is the bigger problem. And then India has built this ecosystem, the technological capabilities within the country, where we can get the best precision manufacturing done in India and we can get them at a very low cost. So these are the factors which will add up to the technologies which we want to build. Now, we are not behind on robotics. We are not behind in advanced applying artificial intelligence to different other applications. So we bring in these capabilities where are already existing in India, build solutions, and now these tech capabilities, when they come together in solving some solutions, I think will be second to none in this particular domain.
Okay. Speaking of solutions, Shiran, and this is a question for the both of you, what would actually, prove India that it has become a global space hub rather than just a growing domestic market? On what fronts are we talking when we say improvement?
So from my side, see, if you take the primary market, if you take it, it's going to be US. So I just want to give some comparisons between the US and the Indian ecosystem. So in US, if you see, it's always about heavy lift launch vehicles or the capability to send crew to space. While we are not competing in that particular domain, we are very good at building the small satellite rockets and then uh, taking these small satellites to dedicated orbits at an affordable cost. So this is the advantage which we are bringing. So something similar to that, we are also like launch vehicles propulsion system. So we are also good at propulsion systems. So the solid propulsion, we have mastered in solid propulsion. We have mastered in liquid propulsion. Now the semi cryogenics are coming up. Cryogenics we already have mastered. So the propulsion systems ecosystem is also really good in India. What Krishanu is doing, the applications, because we have got 1.4 billion people. So they all require a lot of solutions. And Vikram Sarabhai in 1960s, he said that we should be second to none when it comes to applying space applications to the common man. So I think we have that potential to build great applications from India.
Absolutely. Krishanu, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll jump on a example that what we have in front of us. ISRO built a product in last I'll say 10 years back called Bhuvan. It's a you everybody knows Google Earth, right? So you must be using in your own some form of Google Earth to access your areas, house, your local situations, sometimes series, etc. India also has a platform. It's called Bhuvan. It's a ISRO built platform where India's problem statement, starting from our localized problem like say, agriculture, road infrastructure, environment, mining, flood. So it's not only a static database where it shows some bunch of satellite data, so you can see your house on the map, but it also gives you analytics. It tells you which school are available next to your house, say for example, or if you want to go to some banks, though where those banks are available, similar to Google Maps, but much richer than Google Earth, delivering real world problem solutions to the problems that we have as a country. And it been used by government of India, many other sectors, you name it, ministries, they are using this day and night. So why I'm saying this? This is an example that what we can create for the country, and so this is one of the fantastic example where a space analytics, space data it comes and put in the right use, it can solve a lot of people's problems. So that's definitely is one of the areas, applications, as Chiran was also mentioning. But what I can also tell, we've been using space and space analytics as a user for decades, but also now we are one of the examples. So we have created a platform called Mirka. It's a maritime domain awareness platform. It covers almost 10 million square kilometer hour of our Indian Ocean regions, where it utilizes a lot of satellites, a lot of AI, a lot of other electronics intelligence databases to extract information like say dark ships, track it, and try to identify what it means for the users, right? So those kind of applications are the areas where I think, not only because I'm the downstream side of the story, but still I think this is what we can export quickly, easily, creating a lot of success stories commercially, and also I'll say politically as well. I keep on saying, success of the space ecosystem lies on the hand of the downstream applications. It actually happens on the world, in the earth, right? So I think, bunch of applications where it touches, human lives through these kind of national security, critical infrastructure, disaster, agriculture. These are the areas, definitely are the areas where we should be focusing.
Okay, all right. Thank you for answering that, Krishanu and Chiran. I would like to steer the conversation here slightly and talk about whether private industry can scale what ISRO built. Because ISRO is progressively, I would say, stepping back from routine manufacturing, right? SSLV technology has already been transferred to HAL. PSLV and LVM3 could follow. Now, the vision is for ISRO to essentially focus on research and frontier missions, while private companies, they manufacture, own, and they commercialize mature systems. Now, I would say that is a significant transition in itself. ISRO built these systems over decades with institutional knowledge that is genuinely hard to transfer. Chiran, again, you spent 14 years inside ISRO. Can private Indian companies actually manufacture and operate systems like SSLV and PSLV reliably, or would you say that the institutional knowledge is what makes those rockets work harder to transfer than it looks? Where do you stand on that?
I think if you consider the rockets, right, more than 90% of the rocket parts are built by the industry already, so which has been happening already for a long time now. But the final integration and the final mission operations is still with ISRO till few years back. Now SSLV or PSLV are being transferred to the industry. But these industries are like already working on this space activities for a long time. The consortium of HAL and L&T or other companies, if you take also, they're already working on this flight hardware. So they know the quality requirements of building something for space. Now that final integration and the final mission operations or launching operations, I think that is where the hand holding of ISRO to the industry is very much required, and that's already happening. So the transition is not just going to be we hand over everything to the industry and industry will do it. So the transition will be through some particular missions where both of them will work together while the knowledge is being transferred from ISRO to the industry. And once the ISRO is completely confident that the industry can handle it independently, that is when you will see the mission independently being launched by these industries.
Right. So you'd say that there is certainly an optimistic start to it.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for that. Krishanu, Suhora works across satellite data from multiple providers. You see how the ecosystem actually functions. Is Indian private industry ready to take on this responsibility, or do you think from your vantage point that we are moving faster than the capability warrants?
So I'll just again fall back to an example.
Yeah, please.
A couple of years back, we actually submitted our proposal to one of the very critical apex organizations in the country. I can't name it. Sorry. So who are the contenders against us? I'll just give example. Bunch of Western companies for our border surveillance and national security requirement. government of India stood firm. Okay, if a company which has uh, even a 50% capability of what we are getting from the western side of the of the deliveries of the service providers, we like to bet on it. But 2023 is the year. Now we are going with the third year of executions with the same customer with almost double down to what we have started with. So I think we are not only achieving more at this moment to what, or rather whatever the users are asking, we are not at par, but we are achieving more with the users. Our years of experience, as I know, this falls back to what you asked Chiran earlier about the ISRO, right?
Yeah.
We have a bunch of ISRO people which we take help from. These are the people we love ISRO, right? What they have achieved, the feat they have achieved, it's unbeatable, right? So we go and fall back to the resource pack they have created, the tech stack they have created. We use them. We use them as the foundation layer, then take it from there to deliver more. So that's precisely what we have done, and I'm pretty sure we as an industry are not only ready for the domestic use cases, but we are ready for the global use cases as well.
Okay.
Some of the success stories, I'm pretty sure that 20 companies were there. Some of the companies were also exporting to many other countries. That speaks loud that yes, we are now ready for taking not only showing the red eyes to the Western companies, but
Right.
also making it I'll say standing equal with them. So yeah, so I think that makes sense. Yeah.
All right. India's clearest advantage in space, I think, is cost. But international customers don't really decide on cost alone, right? They need reliability, they need frequency, they need long-term support, they need trust that the company they are contracting will be there in the next 5 years. Krishanu, again, Suhora competes directly with the US and Israeli geospatial firms. When you are in those particular competitive situations, would you say that the cost is actually the deciding factor, or is it something harder to build, like the concept of trust and track record for that matter?
So my personal I'll say thesis is cost opens the first door. Of course, you have to be cost effective when you are starting something very I'll say otherwise dominated by other companies' space, right? But you cannot stay there for long. You have to build from cost effectiveness to trust and the cadence and the capability, right? So cost to value journey has to happen. Cost is definitely is not the space that no company like Suhora wants to play. Uh, we again, our existence is the biggest example how this transition happened from cost to the to the value. Uh, when these kind of strategic users, the apex users, who the country's decision of a strategic nature depends on these kind of platform, it has to happen on the trust. It has to happen on the the SLS. It has to happen on the the I'll say moat you create around that people trust, etc. So I think one sec. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
That's all
There
right.
was some power
Happens
outage.
to the best of
Yeah, so
us.
what I was saying, cost is the first step, but you have to take the journey from cost to the value, and that's a long, painstakingly journey, but it's a very important journey for any company like Suhora. I'm pretty sure Chiranjeevi also concurred to that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
absolutely.
depends on which application we are talking of. In your particular application, I think cost comes first, the downstream application. But if someone is building a satellite worth 50 crores or 100 crores, they certainly require a most reliable vehicle, launch vehicle to carry their satellite than the
Yeah.
cost. So there, the reliability and the trust plays a bigger role than the cost. So again, it all depends on which aspect of the space we are talking of.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. Chiran, the active debris removal market is projected at $5.9 billion, right? Cosmoserve is targeting 90% lower cost than the competitors. But this is a market where I would say trust is everything, right? You're asking satellite operators and governments to let your spacecraft approach their assets. How do you really build that sort of trust as an Indian startup that wasn't there a couple of years ago? How is it that you work around it?
So first to correct that number of $5.9 billion estimation. So that estimation was there before Elon Musk has filed an application to launch 1 billion satellites. So
Okay.
when he filed an application to launch 1 billion satellites, so all the numbers were all wrong now. So these
Oh, all
numbers are
right.
going to be much, much larger very soon.
Can you give us
Uh,
the projected number then, Chiran? You
no, no
have
one
any?
knows because the projections are yet to happen after he
Oh,
files this
okay.
application.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
And then coming to your question of how do you build that trust? I think the
Yeah.
trust will come only by seeing. So we need to take our technology demonstrations in space, successfully prove them on multiple applications or multiple occasions, and that builds the trust to the customers. So we have the conversations with all the customers, but all of them are waiting to see when our product will be launched to space, and they see the real data. So that's when the trust will be built, and we are focused on doing multiple technology demonstrators for the next 2 years.
Right. Chiran, was there any sort of apprehension, any hesitancy when you first had this conversation? Because again, this is something not everybody has even attempted at. Like letting alone attempt, they have not even thought about it. So was there some sort of apprehension in the room?
Yeah, of course, of course. Wherever I start this conversation, the first question comes to me is who will pay for it? Who will pay for the removal? So that's a very common question comes. And then very recently, the US federal government has brought this 5-year rule, which states that any satellite operator in the world should remove their dead satellites within 5 years of their end of life. So that has created the commercial market now. So because of which people are now building solutions in this particular domain. And
Okay.
this particular rule is going to be adopted across the world, across all spacefaring nations. So there
All
is going to
right.
be a demand, and now you need to prove that you'll be able to do that. So that's more important now.
Right. Thank you for answering that, Chiran. Krishanu, from your vantage point, can India retain its cost advantage while paying global salaries and investing in advanced infrastructure? Because, as the ecosystem matures, costs are bound to rise, right? Is the cost advantage structural or temporary and declining? What do you have to say on that?
I think it's structural. It's structural
Okay.
because essentially this market was dominated by people where the premium was paid at multiple x first. So if you want to break that that structure at the fundamental level, you have to give enough incentives to the users. And I'm talking of the homegrown application, homegrown use cases, right? So that I think it starts with something which first of all starts as a price vantage point, then it goes towards the value vantage point, then the trust. When the trust is built, and this trust is very well earned, and it's very hard earned, by the way. Once the trust, you become in my space like ISR, right? So if you become a very trustworthy ISR platform which is developing and delivering mission critical applications to many of the contingencies, say for example, that trust itself drive a lot of premiumness, and that will bound to happen if you really focus on the right side of the journey, right?
Right.
So that's what I personally think. It's a structural change. It
Okay.
will happen with the time, and of course you have to keep on building and proving, and keep on hand holding often,
Right.
because often the users don't want to understand the technology behind it. They want to understand the way they wanted to see a problem statement, right? Once you take those everything together and keep on taking the journey, yes, the value will definitely will come. So
All right. All right. I also want to talk about the space tech startups here. I think 440 is the number. 440 registered space tech startups is an impressive number, but most are at an early stage, and a much smaller group has operational products and recurring customers and international contracts for that matter. The question is whether India produces several globally significant space companies or consolidates around a handful while the rest struggle. Krishanu, again, the question is to you: how many Indian space startups have actually progressed from, from demonstrations to, I would say, sustainable commercial operations, and which segment is closest to genuine global scale?
See, Antara, if you see 5 years back, the space tech company maybe
Less than
20
10.
or less than 10. What's you're saying?
10.
Yeah. So 10 to 440. So itself is a huge success.
Exponential
It's exponential growth in numbers, and that's one. Second, space is hard. It always has a gestation period. There's a learning curve. You have to give that time to those, to the people. We bringing back to our company again. We before we started Suhora, we already had fair amount of expertise like Dr. Chiran, right? So I was with a company, a European company, managing their Southeast Asia market, knowing the market, and of course taken the clue from there, right? The new companies, are definitely, out of 440, there's a very few are, commercially successful today. But do we expect them to be commercially successful in next, last couple of years? Then if it is so, then we are expecting, to do an elephant to give and birth in a few months. So similar to that. So I will cautiously, I will be very cautious in that sense. So we have to give them time first.
Okay.
Space is tough. Space is, bound to fail.
Fair.
You have to give that time to that as well. But definitely, in the sense, the few companies where the new payloads are coming, quite a few companies has launched their payloads. We're using quite a few of them. Pixel is, of course, definitely is one of the greatest, example. Of course, Skyroot is example. So that I will keep us enough fuel to keep on building. There are some setbacks as well, of course, and that's the part of the game.
Certainly.
I think we are doing great in terms of the journey itself. So this journey requires time, and we have to be patient enough, Antara. Unless we want to do something very minuscule and very small, if you want to create something really meaningful, then you have to give it time.
Understood.
But,
Chiran, Cosmoserve has backing from Ram Shriram, one of, I would say, Google's earliest investors. You, in fact, signed an MOU as well with Dawn Aerospace for, refueling collaboration. You are essentially building global partnerships, which, like we were just discussing, it's not something that is, quite widespread. What is still the hardest door to open for you? What is your biggest bottleneck?
I think understanding the context in a different geographical location itself is the biggest bottleneck. So, still I'll be able to talk very well with a space person in a different domain, different geographical location. But then understanding context and getting into a conversation in a different geographical location, still that I feel is a bottleneck to crack the deals in those geographical locations. So now, as you said, like great people are there in our cap table. We have Ram Shri Ram, a very early investor in Google, Shakti BC, Alan Rutledge, Om Ventures, all of them backed us. So they are opening some doors in different geographical locations. And Dawn Aerospace we signed an MOU to do a combined refueling mission in future. So like that, we are now talking to different companies to do a collaborative mission to prove our technologies in space, and also to serve them whenever they require a debris removal or a dead satellite removal from space.
Understood, Chiran. Chiran, and of course, I'm talking to the both of you here. Both companies here work with or are targeting government customers, right? Government demand is often essential while emerging companies, they build flight heritage, commercial credibility, and recurring revenue. But Indian government procurement has I would say, a sort of a reputation for being sometimes slow and not designed for startups with limited runway. Chiran, the debris removal market doesn't really, at least did not until now, exist in India. ISRO is not currently a customer for active debris removal either. How do you really build a business around a problem that everyone agrees is important, everyone agrees exists, but nobody is currently paying to solve?
I think one thing echoed in the room in the Prime Minister, along with the Prime Minister, when we all worked together. One thing echoed in that room was most of us are building the technology before even the demand even exists.
Okay.
I think that is very clear because when the demand is already existing and then you start building the technology will take its own time to get matured, and by then there will be a lot of competition and you will not have that first mover advantage. So we have a great conviction that this is going to be a really large market, and
Okay.
whomsoever are having that conviction are backing us, and then we are all moving forward. Now with this we are building the technology and we expect the technologies will get matured by 2028. So by then the markets also will be evolving. So when these two matches, that is when I think there will be great synergy in the business.
Understood. Understood. Krishanu, Suhora works in defense and disaster management with both government and just markets. Is Indian government procurement fast enough and also honest enough for a startup at your stage, or is it still a system that is designed for large established vendors? What do you think?
I think a lot of change has happened in last few years. In the existence of Suhora itself, when 2018 we started. So even initial few years when we as a company we didn't have any credible I'll say reputations, but we started demonstrating certain capabilities to certain departments. They didn't shut the door on our face. They started seeing, okay, is there a credible outcome is coming from in-house, right? I think this is the nature of the beast, defense. If you say, national security, they they always require the best product. So it's bound to happen. Okay, they will compare you with what is available at the best in the country, in the market, right? I think that where you have to the competition might feel a little not little irrational, right?
Yeah.
So that is something I will hop on rather than looking at the bigger institutional player. Of course, bigger institutional player started somewhere and they have reached to a institution by delivering certain cadence, certain trust to their users. We also so what I think, of course, the Indian procurement cycle is different, I'll say.
Okay.
But it has changed a lot, and it has not side away to support government also Indian startups in recent futures, recent past. Sorry. So I think it has changed. It will change more. It has shown its trust to look inwards for heavy duty applications, heavy duty operations as well. And it poised to change further, Antara, and it is I can see that is happening in many of the procurement mechanism, many of the way they are started. In the defense itself, there's a IDEX program, there's many other programs, right? So that's how they're making opening many doors. How the new companies can come and try if you have a capabilities, they will listen, and eventually they will also procure from you.
Right. I also want to talk about whether or not space can create, space technology can create that sort of value or not, because this was specifically what Prime Minister also asked the founders to think about, right? Make space useful for agriculture, for disaster management, urban planning, ordinary citizens. That is a very, very different conversations from your regular rockets and satellites, right? It's about whether the technology actually, reaches the people who need it the most. Krishanu, Suhora turns satellite data into intelligence for defense and disaster response. Why haven't satellite applications achieved mass adoption in Indian agriculture and insurance yet? Because the data exists, the need exists, but the the adoption by itself hasn't really happened at scale. Why do you think that is?
So that's actually, it's a multi-fold question, Santara. So for decades, we've been pushing, either data or some tools to exploit the data. What a user, say, you said about agriculture, right? Say agriculture, I'm not talking about the farmers. Farmers is a little too much at this moment. If you say, okay, a state government which has a requirement to monitor the agriculture yield, say for example,
Right.
some state governments, some smaller state government, right? They don't need a data. They need an informations. That informations which can be utilized for their, to optimize the resources. If there's some water scarcity, some example like say some hailstorm have happened, you have to compensate your farmers in a scientific manner. So that piece of intelligence was missing. We used to deliver them data, and the data to information, this journey itself is a long haul journey.
Right.
And so the establishment of a product, a science, and the applications was never established the way it is happening now. Today, I'll just give an example.
Yeah.
I'm dialing from Noida, and in winter, Noida. I don't know if you know. There's a very peculiar issues called stubble burning, right? So stubble burning happens every single day, and now we are helping some of the customers. In this case, say Haryana government, they use this space technology to track and monitor every single day where are the farms are being being burnt. Not to penalize, of course, the farmers, to sensitize and give them rewards if they are not doing. Some different manners are there. So this kind of intelligence is available today. It was not there earlier. So this
Right.
is one. Second, of course, space data. It has its own cost. The satellite captures data. It comes down to the earth through ground stations. It has its own way of processing, and then comes back to the user's hand. It has, first of all, the resources that we used to have. The Indian satellites, say for example, ISRO's IRS, sensors, are handful. If you really need a operational level data, it has to be enough satellite to capture it. And first, that's first. Second, it has to be making a commercial viable product enough to people to buy it. So that was also not a very well established, which has changed in recent past. Now we have enough satellite, some of them free, some of them commercially viable, which can be if used properly, can help a users, in this case some say agriculture users or say disaster management authorities, to use that real time data for real time applications. So this was not there earlier, which is changing rapidly now, and we have already, as I said time and again, we are one of the example how this is happening.
Right. Thank you for answering that, Krishanu. Chiran, debris removal again, I'll talk about that again, is a public good problem, right? A cleaner orbit benefits everyone. But having said that, it's hard to capture payment from beneficiaries. How do you really build a business around something whose value is diffuse and whose customers are still sort of trying to figure out whether or not they should be paying for it?
So yeah, now I usually give this example of your car getting stuck on a road. You can't leave the car there. You need to call a tow van to remove that car so that the
Correct.
road is cleared. Otherwise, you will, you will be heavily fined for not removing the car, and someone
Correct.
else will remove the car for you. So such kind of regulations are in place now, very recently. So that is forcing the satellite operators not leaving their dead satellites in space and removing it from orbit. So that is one kind of market. That is the commercial market. And space debris problem is also something similar to the climate change problem. There are no boundaries in space, like for the climate also, right? So now they should, for climate change, you have a green climate fund, which collect taxes from all the countries who are creating that pollution, and use these funds to do or help the companies to mitigate these climate change problems. So something similar to that is also being discussed under United Nations Office of Outer Space Activities, where all these countries, they are all countries or the satellite operators, they'll be funding these missions to remove the legacy objects or the bigger rocket bodies which are creating threat to the operational satellites for a long time. So by removing that, then everyone will get benefited. So it should be a publicly funded mission where everyone will get benefited. So these are the two aspects. One is from the government or intergovernment agencies, and the second one is the commercial agents, commercial operators.
Okay, understood. Krishanu, my next question is to you. Could solving India's problems be the pathway to creating, I would say, globally relevant space products? Because India has its own set of problems, right? Disaster management, border surveillance, agriculture monitoring, that the world also has. Does building for India first create a genuinely exportable solution?
That's the only way, actually.
Okay.
I'll again fall back to some of the examples. Maritime domain awareness. India has long maritime areas. Actively, we have to monitor almost a little north of 10 million square kilometer per day. If you solve this for the country, where we track almost every dark ships which are operating at, say, Indian Ocean region, you can very easily scale it to the globe. You can do it, for any country you can think of, be it, our Asian countries to our, European countries, because thankfully, and, satellite are global in nature. While it captures Indian data, it can capture any part of the world. Of course, the orbits is optimized for certain country need. That's a different story. But there's enough satellite providers, and every satellite has to go in an orbit which can capture, and then if you use it for the way it is delivering data and use it properly, it can deliver the same set of solutions. Now coming back to the usefulness, right? The at the deep inside every country's every critical infrastructure you can think of for any country are the same. What we are as a country, we are dealing with our threats to the country, our the critical infrastructure need like agriculture, etc., is the need for any country you can think of. Of course, as a geopolitical and the deterrence point of view, every country has its own attitudes towards this problem. But underneath is the same problem.
Okay.
Second, the heterogeneity of the country. If you build for the country, I'll just give an example. The way it is there for Haryana government or North Indian part of the country, like say stubble burning, it's very unique. But you know what? This is available. This stubble burning issue is a kind of global phenomena. Indo-Gangetic countries, at least many countries I can think of right now, are having similar issues. If you solve it for the country, you can solve it for the for the rest of the other countries as well. So I think yes. So if you solve it for the country, you can you have created enough success stories for you to export to any other countries.
Right, got it. I also want to talk about whether or not India can finance that long space tech journey. I'm talking factories, launch fleets, satellite constellations, and orbital infrastructure that require far more capital than prototypes and demonstration missions. Now, the 1,000 crore rupee government-backed venture fund is a start, yes, of course. But space tech journeys are long, arduous, and expensive. And patient capital in India, I would say, is still scarce. Chiran, my question is to you here. Cosmoserve raised $3.17 million in pre-seed funding. That is genuinely early-stage capital for a company building autonomous spacecraft. How far does that actually get you, and what do you think is I would say, the next major capital challenge for you?
And I think with the 3.17 million, we completed one technology demonstration in space already, and we
Hmm.
are planning few more technology demonstrations. And we are also raising the second round. So the
Hmm.
capital availability is there, but your primary question is like this capital availability is there for the technology demonstrations alone or
Hmm.
for commercialization. I
Hmm.
think that more is already happening in India.
Hmm.
So many venture capital firms are now looking at space as one of the interesting sectors. So, two aspects to that. One is SpaceX IPO, the largest in the world. So, that is an eye opener for any financiers to think that this is the sector which they have to focus now. And the
Hmm.
second one is Skyroot's Vikram 1 successful mission on the first maiden flight. And then government supporting all the deep tech firms through a specific fund, a deep tech fund or RDI, research and development fund. Now these all things are adding up, and then most of the capitals, venture capitalists or the angel investors or the high net worth individuals, they are now looking at India or the Indian space tech startups to invest in their companies. So I think we can eventually move from just technology demonstrations to
Okay.
building a bigger factories and doing bigger missions. If you see Skyroot's factories, they build three factories. One is 50,000 square feet. The second one is the 2 lakh square feet, and the much bigger facilities are coming up now.
Hmm. Absolutely. Chiran, it's a small follow-up question on that. Could dependence on foreign capital shift ownership and IP outside India? I'll tell you why I'm asking that. Now, Ram Shriram is American. Dawn Aerospace, I believe, is from New Zealand. As you build international partnerships, how do you ensure that that the strategic value by itself it stays in the country in India itself?
No, I think we need to do it strategically. We need to build when something is built in India. I think you need to register your IP also here in India. And when something is built in their country, you need to build your IP in that country.
Hmm.
So it all depends on where you are building and what for you are using that.
Hmm.
So we place ourselves, and whenever we are building something to the Indian government or whenever we are building something to the defense forces, we ensure that the tech is developed in India and registered in India.
Okay, understood. I'll have to wrap this segment now in the interest of time, but I do have one final question before I let you both go. Uh, a decade from now, will India be known as a country that builds space technologies affordably, or as a place where the future of space is actually being built? And what is it that what does your company need to do to make the second story come true? Shiran, if you want to take this first.
Yeah, see, one example I want to give. In early 1960s, when humans traveled to space, we just started with a sounding rocket, a small rocket sending to space. So from then on, we became the first country to go to Mars in our maiden first flight. So many firsts were there. We were the first country to go to South Pole of Moon by Vikram lander. So we start late, but then eventually we'll be able to lead in certain segments.
Hmm.
So that advantage will certainly be there with India for a long time. And over the next decade, I'm sure that India will be leading not in the entire space sector, but at least some of these verticals in the space sector. Certainly, India will be leading. I'm 100% sure about that. And the in-orbit servicing, assembly, and manufacturing. This is a bigger umbrella which is very much essential for space sustainable operations. And Cosmoserve is actively working on creating a bigger solutions for all these in-orbit servicing and assembly and manufacturing in space.
Understood, Chiran. Thank you for that. Krishanu, anything that you might want to add?
Yeah, so I think for the last very few decades, Indian IT industries has shown, okay, we can build and we can deliver for the world, right? So there's a fair amount of trust has been created around that, and this definitely space is not an exception in this case. We have to pick and choose what we do at the first. I think downstream applications are the ones which we can quickly use it to become, in world's number one players. It supports world's problem, a large scale, I'll say global scale, solutions, delivering critical solutions for the users. If you see SDGs, sustainable development goals, so there's at least four SDGs where it connects directly, with the space, right? I think if you focus on those areas, and the India's trust, India remain on that trustworthy, partners to quite a few countries. In the G20, it's definitely one of the area we should be looking at, BRICS, etc. So I'm pretty sure, we can become, at least downstream number one player to start with, then work on the other sectors of the space sectors.
Absolutely. Well, Chiran and Krishanu, thank you so much for your time. It's been an incredibly invigorating conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, whoever is tuned in right now, India's aura for space won't really be created by a government announcement. It will be created when the world looks at what's coming out of India and cannot easily find it anywhere else. And I believe that work is already underway, and thank you to Chiran and Krishanu for throwing light on this subject so beautifully. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It's been a great conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, whoever is tuned in right now, thank you for watching. This is Point Break. I'm Antara, and I'll see you again next episode.